All right, we're let's see, screen share with it. No, we don't have screen share. Oh well, welcome to Destination Freedom and our live broadcast today. I'm really glad you're here, and if you are catching this later on in our, let me just get the get that out of the way. There you go. And um, if you're catching this recorded, then you can always go to our website destinationfreedom.org. Now tonight. We usually, we usually do this on my phone. So this is the first time we're doing this with a laptop. So we have a nice wide view. That's actually pretty good. And we're not at the office yet. The office is still coming along. We don't have internet there yet. I mean, they have some internet, but you can't even check email. It's so bad. So that's still coming. And so we're still at the homestead doing these broadcasts, but today is special.
With this very valuable painting behind us.
Yeah, we're taking bids on this one behind us here. So anytime you want to let us know,
if you can tell us what it means, we would appreciate it.
That's good. So, but anyway, I'm so glad that you're here, and they tell me I'm supposed to say that be sure to like and subscribe because somehow that does something with the algorithm. Who knows? It's a mystery. But one of the great things about tonight, and if you have questions about state citizenship and all that stuff, I am going to do another call on Wednesday so I could answer your questions. So if we get all done or wrapped up, or we digress into something, we could certainly answer some of those questions. Now, since we're not doing the go-to meeting, we're only here on YouTube. Hopefully, people will catch that that email, and then they'll. I think I know what that is. That's the Telegram stuff here. Let me just quit Telegram here. There we go. So then those notifications aren't going to show up. And let me see. I don't know. Let me see how we're doing the chats on here. So let me know, how's the sound? Can you hear okay? If anybody has, let me see. So we can just
throw a chat.
I'll just say hello. That's right. HE. And we'll just see if we can get the chat going. There we go. Anyway, so if you, okay, that sounds great. Yeah, so we got just the ambiance in the room. Now, when we get to the office, we're going to end up having mics and, good. And, and we're going to possibly, I'm going to check out, see if we can use our desktop, or maybe Greg is going to be down in Belize and we're going to do a call at some point. We'll see if, let me know in the chat, either now or afterwards, if you like Greg.
And or if you don't like Greg, that's fine too. Whatever.
We're going to delete those if you don't like Greg. So I won't let him know that. Won't give him that kind of feedback. But this is special because Greg, comes in from Belize. And how long have you been in Belize?
Well, we moved there permanently 10 years ago in 2014. So when I say permanently, they're about 7-8 months out of the year.
And you built a house there.
Did build a house there, yeah.
That is, and it's
all
beautiful.
Just with these two hands, yeah.
Greg's a builder. That's his background and all that stuff. So
greatest labor of love and pain in the ass.
Oh, I'm sure it is. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But I am thankful because before he heads out, I just wanted to get together because we have very spirited conversations about all kinds of stuff, and so that's kind of fun. So we're actually, this is pretty casual. And we have some brewskis sitting by, and we're just going to sit around and chit chat. I hope that we don't violate their standards. Can you drink alcohol on YouTube?
I'm not.
I've seen people smoking grass on YouTube, so they don't really care.
I'm a musician, so it's one of the few jobs in the world where you can not only are allowed to drink, but you're kind of expected to drink. So,
and we actually considered earlier we were going to sing together and all that stuff. That'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, we'll spare you,
but we'll do that. But anyway, so I did want to talk about a couple things, and we'll digress and get into some other stuff. But I did talk about originally when you talk about moving to Belize or just having a house there and all, because this is your habitation domicile here in New Hampshire,
right?
But you wanted to be in Belize. What was the draw? This was a number of years ago. Why Belize, or why another country? And what was the expectation originally?
Well, I think we wanted to sort of simplify, number one, they don't have, in Belize, there are no chains. There's no Costco. There's no Walmart. There's no Sears. There's no, Tractor Supply or Home Depots. There's none of that. There are no chains in Belize. There's no McDonald's, no Starbucks. It's a country about the size of New Jersey, has 385,000 people in it. So it's very low density population. Belize used to be a very independent country. It had its own banking system that was independent from the international monetary system. It offered great interest rates. You could create trusts there very easily. You could own land. It was easy to go down and open a bank account, and they weren't, reporting anything to the U.S. banks or to Great Britain, even though they are part of the British Commonwealth. They were a colony up until 1981. They got their independence in 1981. And the people are lovely. It's a tremendous mix of Garifuna and Creole and Maya and Hispanic, and also, of course, expats and Mennonites, thousands and thousands, probably 10 or 20,000 Mennonites, 3.5% of the population, 20% of the GDP. They're very productive people. And then you have what they call mesticas, which are people that are basically mixes of any and all of those various factions. And there are a lot of Europeans, a lot of Indians from India there.
So what was the draw?
So the draw was, well, first of all, we're on a little island.
Yeah, because you're not actually in the mainland.
We're not on the mainland. We're on a little island, which is right on the reef, second largest barrier reef in the world. So we look out and see the reef breaking. So scuba diving, snorkeling, fishing, and kite surfing, and it's just spectacular. Manatee and stingrays and sharks and dolphins and turtles and the whole kit and caboodle. So it's a beautiful little island, sandy streets, no cars, and I get to play my music as much as I want.
That's what I was going to say.
That was the big draw.
That's the beauty of what you're doing there, because you like
music.
You like to get, you have your you're paid for singing, and you have your regular gigs.
Different crowd every night, tourists from all over the world, and my wife's a yoga instructor. She does yoga.
Do you have a Facebook page for?
I do. Yeah, it's called Gregory Michael Music Man.
Right. And how about a YouTube channel?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
I've been people tell me to do that for the last 15 years, and I've never done it. So. Probably because YouTube is owned by Google. I'm not a real fan of Google.
I can understand.
And the other thing, I just opened.
You shouldn't say that on YouTube.
What can I say? Honesty is the best policy, they say. Although I don't know if that's true anymore.
It's not in DC.
I was on Facebook a lot during COVID, and then quickly decided I had to get off that effing thing. Effing, yeah. That Fargan. Fargan network, yeah. Right. So I maintain a music page just so I can post my my performances and stuff, and some videos and so forth. But I don't ever go on Facebook anymore because I think it's a fascist organization. But be that as it may. So the draw was obviously Caribbean island. I love diving and snorkeling. Have a little boat, go out to the reef all the time. I love the people. It's very inexpensive. My property taxes are about $65 a year. We live off grid, so we're all solar system, rainwater collection, gray water recycling, and it's just cool, stunning, sort of almost idyllic paradise kind of a little island, and we really love it. Now when hurricane season comes and rainy season comes, which it does in June or July,
you don't have mosquitoes.
Then we're like, I think it's time to go back and visit the family in the States. And my wife is from Europe, so we go over to Europe and we do some traveling. And this year we're going to do Portugal, and we did last year Italy, and the year before we did France, and the year before we did Albania, and the year before that we did, so we just every year we do a little traveling for a month or so, and then in November we head back down to the island, man. We go to the island, man.
So back in 2020, when the pandemic hit, tell me how that went. How did that go in Belize?
Didn't go well anywhere, actually. And Belize, when I told you that Belize was a cool little independent country, it used to be. But over the course of the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years, it has dramatically changed course, and it has become indebted to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to the IMF. And as a result, the IMF props up their currency, and they have been they have had to sort of kowtow to all of the United States banking rules and regulations. And so now basically the U.S. banks control the Belizean banks to the extent that they monitor everything there, and none of it is private anymore, which is unfortunate. You can still own land there, and you can still use your U.S. dollars there, even though they have their own dollar, but it's always kept at 2-to-1. So from a political standpoint, it's become very corrupt. Unfortunately, most of the government operates just to enrich their own ministers and their own families and so forth. They most of their policies hurt the little guy. They have terrible high import taxes. Their gasoline is $6.50 a gallon, U.S. So from that standpoint, it's been a great disappointment.
So what happened during that?
I don't do any politics when I'm in Belize. I don't watch news when I have TV. I'm totally out of politics when I'm in Belize. So to some extent.
Did they shut stuff down during
COVID?
Yeah.
They did everything the Brits and the Americans said. Whatever Tony Fauci, that criminal that is still not in prison. I'm not quite sure why. They did everything he said. Everything he recommended, they did. So it was insane for a couple of months. You couldn't fish off a dock to feed your family. Now they shut down the economy. No tourism. So tourism represents about 70% of their total GDP. And they shut that down. So pretty much unemployment on the island went to like 90%. The only people that were working were construction crews, because in the last 10 years, the amount of money that's flooded to the island is staggering, just staggering. Chinese, Americans, Canadians, Europeans, baby boomers like myself are just flooding to the island. And the government has decided that they're going to put all their resources into tourism. So the consequence is that the island has exploded. So even during COVID, construction never stopped, but all of tourism went away. And so they banned you from fishing off the docks. You couldn't go out on a boat by yourself, right? So without a mask. Now tell me, it's absurd.
Was COVID swimming out towards you in the boat?
Apparently it's in the fish. The fish will give it to you. Oh, and at some point they had curfews, like you couldn't be out of the house after 4 p.m. unless it was like for necessity, right? So one guy was out on the street, and they imposed a $5,000 fine if you were outside the house. Now this is a country. This is a country where the average income is about $5,000, and so they imposed a $5,000 fine if you're outside. So this one guy, a local Belizean, believe me, not a wealthy man by any stretch of the imagination. 50% of the people that live on the island have no indoor cooking facilities. He's out on the street, and the cops pull him over and say, "What are you doing?" It's 4:30. So I got to get some butter. So I'm cooking my supper. I need some butter. That's not a good reason to be out on the street. So $5,000 fine. Now, what happened with almost all those fines is it went to a judge, and the judge said, "This guy can't afford $5,000. So here, $200. Boom, right?" But it was nonsense. So of course they shut all music down, the restaurants down, everything was down. Yeah. So myself and my wife and a bunch of other expats, we put together a soup kitchen. We created a soup kitchen. We did a GoFundMe drive, and over the course of 2 years, we raised somewhere in the vicinity of $100,000 or more, 150 maybe. And at one point, we were feeding 500 people a day during COVID. And the various restaurants that had been closed down, they opened up. The restaurants opened up and offered their kitchen services and their staff.
That's great. That's awesome. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah. You guys had that all going there. So how did that change the way you felt about Belize? I mean, drastically. Would you? Now, I don't. You're not making plans or anything like that, but you've traveled a lot. Are there places that you would be interested in, that you kind of like their economies or things like that? I mean, you joined up with the Lindland project, right?
I did. Yep.
Oh, that's cool. So anybody who's never heard of Lindland, there's a small little micronation that's forming. It's formed, and they're looking for people to participate. They have e-citizenship, and so Lindland is a little. It's not an island. It's actually on the where the Danube River moves between Serbia and Croatia. It's on the Croatian side, and it used to be a part of Serbia, but the river bent differently, and then it was on that side. So Serbia didn't care about that part of Serbia, and they abandoned it. And Croatia was kind of keeping people from it because it wasn't in Croatia, but they were keeping people from being on there. And so
it was almost like a neutral zone.
It was definitely that.
Nobody claimed it.
In the last year, they actually have started to build on Lieberland, which is great.
Yeah.
And I've been a part of that project for. I'm in the process of getting a passport. I'd like to do a diplomat passport so that I can take more ground and interact with the New Hampshire government and other places and stuff. I would love to set up an embassy or a consulate right in Concord, set up and just put Lieberland in there so that we can introduce them to state reps and people like that. We'll have events and galas and stuff like that so that they can begin to, recognize the potential or another country that cares about liberty and freedom more than America. Can you imagine that?
Gee, you think?
Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, I thought Belize did, and I was wrong about that. But the truth of the matter is, because it has such a poor infrastructure, you can live pretty free there. And the nice thing is that I voluntarily pay income taxes there, 6%, and I'm more than willing to do that because they don't have $1 trillion a year military, and they're not droning the world and assassinating who they want and overthrowing governments, and they don't have a military industrial complex of any kind. So I don't mind paying taxes there to help, the infrastructure of the country, and because it is a poor country. So I like that fact. I stopped supporting the United States military industrial complex and everything, all the other bullshit,
bankers
for
all that
30 years ago. So I don't want to participate in that.
Yeah.
Blood money.
And Greg, years ago had done these processes that we do and all that stuff. So he's been around all that.
Yeah, I've done your passport process twice.
But you took my class like one of the first times. It was in Concord.
Yeah, way back when,
years and years ago.
Yeah,
and so it's been.
And I've done your driver's license process as well.
So it's been that's been excellent. Now some of the I wanted to talk a little bit about the some of the current events because what's going on. You just filled out a survey, didn't you, today?
Yeah, the Trump survey.
Well, it showed up in the mail, and so we were laughing about that. And most surveys are written so badly. I mean, it's like they want you to, they want you to say.
Well, they give you 4 boxes to check off, and I added a 5th box almost every time, if not a 6th box.
Editing his own sentiment. And
they're going to look at it and go, yeah, in the circular file, but that's okay.
They were really looking for your money. So,
yeah,
but yeah, that's a cool thing. And
I'm not a Trumpster. I'm certainly not a Biden fan. I haven't voted. Actually, the only Republican I've voted for nationally in the last 30 plus years was Ron Paul.
Right. That's 2008. Yeah. And so that's it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
And the man's impeccable, and more people have come to the freedom movement by him. I don't know if bar none, but in our day and age, I don't know no other statesman besides Ron Paul.
No.
And I've committed to that. If anything happens to him, I am going to Texas. And I will go to that service. I am committed to. I will drop everything and go to Texas to honor them because I don't know anybody in our lifetime that's
I usually
Dr. No.
I usually vote Libertarian whenever I can.
Right. That's the way he was.
And even though the candidates are not perfect by any stretch, they would certainly secure a lot more liberty and freedom than either Republicans or Democrats. I call them Tweedledum or Tweedledummer,
Of course. So that's but again, the thing about the politics, my sentiment these days is that I'm not sending anybody to the District of Columbia, because I promise you this, there is no one that you're going to send there outside of Jesus, and I don't think he's running, but to DC that's going to change him. No. DC will eat that person, kill that person, or make them irrelevant, and it's not going to change. A president is not going to change DC. I promise you that. Besides, the Congress controls the president, always has. How do I know? They can impeach him. They can They can cut off his purse string so he can't fund the wars, but then that won't support the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
So the scourge of the earth is the Congress.
Yeah.
And again, what controls the Congress? We talked about that in the I mentioned in the email about,
term
central
limits.
banks.
We have term limits. It's called voting.
Yeah.
But what is it? What is the statistics now? Something like 65% of Americans or 67% of Americans are disappointed and don't trust their congressmen.
Oh, yeah.
So they keep voting the fuckers in. Well, can I say that on YouTube?
This is not for children. So cover
they
your
keep voting them in. I mean, what's
but no, exactly.
The recidivation. What do they call it? Recidivation.
Right.
They just keep voting these suckers in.
Term limits will make them lame ducks, and you're not going to get a better government even from that. It's not the problem. It's people keep electing them. The problem with DC is the people, because as long as we pay attention to them, then they will be relevant. So again, I'm all done with the union. I've talked about that. Oh, am I anti-American? Of course I am. And look, I love the states. I say make America states again. And if you'd like a bumper sticker, a hat, or a T-shirt that says "Make America States," you just write me in the chat below, and I'll find one for you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I want to decentralize that power, take it away from them. I promise you, I should talk about this at some point of how to do a better military made up of the people, and that would be so easy to facilitate with an elected sheriff, and the sheriff would oversee. Look, in the county, you have so many towns, and the sheriff would just get volunteers from a town, and a town would make up its own little group of people in there. And it's really simple because they would come together, and you'd have all the family support and all that stuff. They'd come down, give it all that. You get businesses to support all of the materials, and whatever they do, they train for their own local safety in their own area. Everybody knows everybody. And then in the county, the sheriff is elected by those same people that he's there. And so he deputizes anybody, but it's all for safety and local. They're not flying to other countries.
Yeah, that was the idea behind
every
state
town,
militias, right?
So every state, and in New Hampshire, we have 10 counties. Imagine 10 sheriffs. They would do these things and made up of these kind of people. And I would say, since America loves sports, you would just have training sports, and they would compete with each other. It would be a lot of
shooting
fun.
competition,
and
like they do in Switzerland,
Yeah, and so that's what happened. Then every state would compete with other states so that you're perfected. Totally. And so that would be fun, and it would be better, and nobody would invade America because they get their ass handed to them. It would be very simple.
And become a force to be reckoned with.
Yes, and it's very simple. Every state that has a coastline would have a Navy. Every state would have an Air Force, an Army, and a Marines, or whatever it is. And so that would make it simple, not a problem. Of course, they can train regionally, train Southern. I mean, it's very simple to put that together because they already have.
But how's that going to happen short of some kind of revolution?
Either
the system has to collapse.
Well, that's what
collapse, which would be difficult for everyone. But it either has to happen, or there has to be some kind of revolution. And it's not going to be a revolution in the box office, because American has already proven that they are completely unwilling to think outside the box and say, hey, wait a second. Why do we keep voting in these two parties that have fucked us in the ass for almost 200 years? We keep voting them in. Hey, how about those other parties? Now imagine this, the Congress. Imagine if you had 12 third-party representatives in Congress, just 12. You know that something like 90% of all the bills passed in the Congress are passed by less than 11 votes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
It would just be.
I think it's even lower than that.
It would be completely upset.
Exactly. So if you had 12 representatives in the Senate that belong to third parties, and it wouldn't matter, it could be libertarian, progressive, reform, constitutional, it doesn't matter, green, you name it, right? They could group together collectively, and they could literally control the Congress, because they could go with the Republicans when the Republicans had a bill that didn't violate human rights, civil liberties, and freedoms, and they could go with the Democrats when the same thing happened. It's rare in both cases, but they could literally swing the votes.
But these parties are another level of construct of controlling people.
Of course.
And again,
two sides of the same coin.
Both for the Democrats, there were Democrats that wanted Bernie Sanders, and the Democrat Party handed them Hillary. And in other places they wanted Trump, and they didn't give him Trump. I mean, we're talking these parties not.
Look what they did to Ron Paul.
They control the narrative. They control everything. It's another construct, and that's screwed up.
I just heard that the DNC was in court elections.
Why the taxpayer dollars made up of most people who aren't those parties? Why do the taxpayers
Why do they have
fund
any
these
power
parties
whatsoever
They
to
should have
determine
nothing.
who is in the debates?
Yeah.
For example, it's called the bipartisan debate committee,
Yeah.
not the nonpartisan. The bipartisan, too. See,
That's it, yeah.
so they control the debates. They determine what the public gets to see on television and on the radio and the news. Well, mainstream news. Of course, it's only
Well, one of the ways
90% owned by 6 corporations.
Well, maybe instead of having parties, we can have genders. How many do we have of those? We have unlimited genders. And so if we had genders representing different candidates, then we would have a lot more because we know there's a bazillion of those. You'd think that'd be 2, but that's what I don't understand that. But nonetheless, that would be more, but that's not the case. Yeah, it's definitely screwed up.
It's totally
And
screwed.
listen, so it's bad enough in the States.
Yeah. It's bad enough in the States, for sure.
Up.
It would be nice if there was a groundswell of the people just, going to their, being influential in their state legislatures and taking the state and saying, we're a sovereign state. We're rejecting federal money. We're gonna do what we were meant to do under the unity of states.
How
and the
many people have
Constitution.
the courage to
And we're going to push
want...
the feds out and say, keep your fucking money.
Oh, yeah.
Keep your ABC agencies that were created by executive order and have
I
no
know.
constitutional merit in the states, only in DC and its territories and so forth. If the states did that, like Mulana Bay or whatever, and one by one, just pow, 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 we could see that, like a wildfire.
You
Right?
wouldn't
It only
have to
takes
secede.
a spark, they say.
You
right?
wouldn't have to secede if you just
you
refuse the money, because then all you would have, you see, what you'd be pushing out is the District of Columbia. And then the federal government would only, the influence it would have, if you will, would be the Constitution in the states. But because they've extended by way of their people, as well as the money, they come in, and that's what brings the District of Columbia in every state of the Union. And it's so bad. It's like, the states have to grow up. And so that's where people are. And the truth is, people have to grow up, because people keep looking to DC for everything.
Listen,
NEA.
How did the war on drugs?
Stuff.
How did legalization of marijuana happen? It didn't happen from the top down.
It did not.
It happened from the bottom up.
Right.
And that's just one thing.
That's just,
so if that process were to occur in
that's a good word.
all other,
that's a good word.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and practice the fine art of saying no.
Sure.
Or just saying I'm not interested, or no thank you, or the idea that the federal government doesn't have to be in every matter and issue of our lives.
Listen, if you saw a guy beat the crap out of someone else, steal their money, right, and then come to you and say, "Hey, you want some money? Would you take it?" No, but that's what our government does. How does it do? How many drone strikes did Obama, Hope and Change, right? How many drone strikes did he authorize? Over 500, and 90% of them killed innocent people. But he's such a lovely man, right? And Biden spearheaded what? The invasion of Iraq, right? Invaded a sovereign country. America killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein did during his entire tenure there, right?
It's amazing.
So,
but we're making
any money that the states get from the federal government is dirty money. It's blood money. It's money. Not only is it taken off the blood of other people, but it's also debt to the banksters.
They're the
international banksters. Yeah, the Rothschilds, the Kuhn-Loebs, the Warburgs. All these international banksters that run the World Bank and the IMF and the European Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve, right? So it's blood money. So states are taking blood money. I don't understand it. And I don't understand how a Christian nation can authorize these military actions. $1 trillion a year we spend. You realize since 1776, of all those years that the United States has been in existence, only 16 years have we not been involved in a war or military operation somewhere in the world. Out of the 193 countries I think there are now, we have been involved. Our CAA and our DOD and other aspects of the State Department, because believe me, a lot of it is run through the State Department, and I know because I have relatives who work for the State Department. 135 countries. 135 countries. We have been involved in coups, overthrowing the governments, assassinations, political, CIA operations, funding their black prisons so that they can training their people to torture and all this kind of stuff. 135 countries. I mean, it's staggering. And yet Americans keep putting these bastards into office and keep saying, yeah, America first. Yeah. Make America great again. When was America great? Tell me that. When was America
when
great?
they signed the Declaration of Independence.
Bingo. And then it went all downhill from there. And you can hate me for that and say I'm not a patriot. I'm a patriot. I believe in the principles on which America was founded.
Yeah.
That all men are created equal. All men, not just American men, all men. That means everywhere in the world.
That's right.
And they're endowed by the Creator, not by government, with certain
inalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
And that
to secure these rights,
governments are instituted among men,
driving their just powers from the consent of the government.
So that means the prime directive of government,
the only purpose of government
is to secure rights.
End of story.
Nothing else. Not to feed the poor.
No, that's the charity.
Not to house the whatever. It's not to ensure
all
that
men's rights.
Safety. Not to make sure that your electrical switch works and that's not what government was designed for. That's not to say that we can't create institutions, voluntary institutions, that will do all of this.
That help people.
Right?
That's
to help
charities.
people.
That's how people help each other.
Of course, you hire a plumber. You want to know he's been trained. He knows what the fuck he's doing. So you have an organization, an association that certifies plumbers. Doesn't grant them licenses because that would be the granting of a privilege. And to work and to promote and to do your trade is a right. It's not a privilege.
We've lost our way with respect to just being men and women.
And it just keeps stacking itself. So
it's not getting better.
It's like we've created this mountain of bureaucracy. Like I remember reading once that U.S. Regulations on the importation and exportation of melons is like 3,000 pages. I think it was Lynn Meredith. She had it in her book, right? It was like 3,000 pages. Meanwhile, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are only like 85 pages, right?
It's just amazing.
But melons apparently are more important because it took 3,000 pages to establish the it's insanity.
It is.
It's like
insanity.
COVID. It's insanity. And we flew here just not very long ago, maybe a month ago or so, and there's still people wearing they're wearing dust masks. They're wearing dust masks in the airport.
They just feel comfortable with wearing those masks.
Like, it's going to keep a virus out. First of all, there are no known airborne viruses. Never have existed. They've never proven that viruses are infectious. They've been unable to do it. They take a sick person who's got sweats and fever, and they got this disease, and they've determined that they have a particular virus, right or wrong, and they've taken mucus from their nose and their throat, and they stick it in the nose and the throat of healthy people. And they've done this thousands of times, and they have never successfully made someone sick from that. So
there's something else, and they're not.
So not only can it not be obtained through mucoidal transfer, but it sure as fuck can't be transmitted through the air. It's impossible. Never happened. Fauci is a liar. The pharmaceutical industry are liars, and the U.S. government is complicit in just perpetuating the lie. If you go on Google now, it's just constant lies. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
All right, now you just may have sabotaged my channel here. So pay no attention.
No one's going to
pay no attention to the old blonde guy from the island.
These are just the opinions. These are just my opinions. They're not necessarily opinions of Christopher Gronsky and Destination Freedom.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, you can make up your own mind of what you're going to believe. The CDC will change it every other week, and so it really won't matter what
CDC, a quasi-government corporation. What the fuck does that mean? See, they hold about 35 patents to vaccines
and to viruses. If allegedly those things is like that.
Oh yeah,
so it's definitely
Fauci owns over a dozen patents on the manipulation of viruses because because we know. Listen, I got to tell you, you got to watch the interview with Robert Kennedy Jr.
That's what I was going to hope you mentioned. And Glenn Beck. That's like the
whether you like Glenn Beck or not, it's a great interview because RFK, he's an insider. He knows, right? Not only is he a Kennedy, but he defended, the Children's Defense Fund. He's defended hundreds of families for kids who developed autism or sudden infant death or paralysis or all kinds of issues immediately following their vaccines. So whether you believe that vaccines are harmful or not is secondary, because RFK also is a wealth of information about the CIA and his uncle's assassination and subsequently his father's assassination and the tie between the CIA and the Cubans and the mafia and all those types of things. And so it's a really amazing interview when you listen to it and you find out about the workings of the CIA. And one of the things that comes up is the fact that the U.S. government banned biological. It was Nixon, I believe, who banned during his administration. He banned biological weapons, make the manufacturing of biological weapon, which includes this taking viruses and making them more and more deadly, right?
What do they call that? They call that cause.
Yeah. It'll come to me.
It's
yeah. So
change of cause. What is it?
So
I can't remember what.
So what happened is the CIA basically
gain of function.
Gain of function research on viruses. They make them as deadly as they possibly can.
They're making weapons, is what
they're making. Weapons.
They want weapons,
of course. Well, and they also there's a whole story to that. But anyway, so what the CIA did essentially is they just threw it over to the CDC and gave it to Anthony Fauci, and Anthony Fauci then took that and sent most of it overseas, because what happened is the NIH, lawyers went to Fauci at some point and said, what you're doing could be considered gain of function, and you don't want to be doing that. You'd be violating law. So he went to the Chinese, of course, and anyone who's looked into this knows this is the case. But anyway, that was all because the CIA in the 60s and the 50s, they were doing gain of function research on viruses. And of course, so were the Soviets, and so
Right. Well, they're all making weapons.
So it's still going on.
Because the idea of making a weapon in which you could target a certain people.
Imagine if you could just target your opponents.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you could figure out
running for office,
and of course they want that, because they want to have a nice, clean, taking out of people, and where you can't tell who caused it.
In Belize, at the time of their independence in 81, 85% of the population was of color.
Yeah.
Can I say black anymore?
Yeah.
I say it to my black friends, and they're not offended by it because they call me white.
Let me hold that thought a second. If we lose power here, we'll come back on, but we have a thunderstorm coming through, so it's a possibility. So if we blank out, stand by. We'll move quickly. We'll have power, but it'll be back up. But I'll have to put the internet back on. We may take 5 or 10 minutes to come back on. We would come back on. So if for some reason we pop out, for some reason, just stand by. We'll be back up shortly. But anyway, I wanted to mention that. So thanks.
During COVID, at some point the government was threatening to mandate vaccines for. You couldn't go in any public building without a vaccine. So as soon as the Minister of Health came out with that announcement, I booked a flight out of the country, because we stayed during COVID. We stayed the whole time. And we live away from the village, away from the cops, and we didn't.
So you were stateside at the end of that?
We were in Belize, and then when he made that announcement at some point in I guess it was early 2021, I booked a flight out of the country, and I said, I'm out of here.
So where were you during 2021? Or
So what happened is, in the 2 weeks while I was waiting to fly out, the Mennonites stepped up and went to the government and said, well, okay, well, if you're going to ban people from public buildings because they're not vaccinated, then we're just going to, we'll shut down everything. We'll shut down all our auto stores, our tire stores, our meat, because they provide all the beef, most of the chicken, most of the produce, most of the lumber. We'll just shut everything down. Your economy's already dead, 70% down, so we'll just shut the other 20% down, and you'll have nothing. And
that changed.
And the government went, we were just floating that idea. And so, but I had already booked my ticket, so I came back to the States and for a couple of months, and then we ended up going back, and that's cool.
Good.
But my point is that at the time, I think they only achieved like a 35 or 40% vaccination rate in the entire country. And one of the big reasons for that was because most of the blacks said, nah, this vaccine, this is a white man's way to kill the black man.
That's how they felt. Wow, that's amazing.
It's a white man doing this, kill off the black people.
That's just crazy.
They just didn't trust, and it may not be true, but they just didn't trust the people who were promoting all the nonsense about it, right? The Anthony Fauci's and the Klaus Schwab's and the World Health Organization and the Gates Foundation, all those like Nazis. I call them Nazis, fascists at the very least. So, of course, the Nazis were fascists. So, fascism, Mussolini said, true fascism is the merger of corporate power and state power. Now, what do we have in America? Let's see. Who determines our elections? Corporations. Who
On
controls
every level?
Who controls 90% of the media? Corporations.
Yeah.
Who runs the central bank, even though it's illegal to have a central bank? Corporations, right? Who's in charge of healthcare? Corporations. Who's in charge of our healthcare system? Insurance companies, corporations. I mean, all the federal agencies are in bed with corporations. Most of them are run by corporate CEOs. Corporations donate.
They also move between government
grants. It's just like this money crisscrossing between corporations.
Well, not only that, but people who are in government, who are supposed to be watchdogs over these corporations, they move into the corporations. The same people that are in government, or people in corporations will move right into the government.
Absolutely.
And they'll on payroll over here. Now they're in government. Yeah. That's a swing door policy in
revolving door. So technically, you could argue that we are a corporatist state, and as such, that would meet the definition of a fascist state. And maybe we're not 100% fascist, but we're certainly.
I thought we were a democracy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like that's a thing.
Where'd that come from? See, is that in the Constitution?
Oh, I think they're teaching that to the kids in schools. No, it's not.
Yeah, democracies are created to protect. No, I don't think so.
That's not in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. Exactly. But if you read the founders on democracy, you'll see how they felt about.
You could argue we're a small d democracy because we have an elected
democratic process. But even that, a representative form of government is a republic.
Yeah,
and that's what we are. So, but anyway, I also wanted to make sure that if you had any questions for Greg or myself, we'd be glad to answer them. We can see some of your, at least I think you can see. I can't see anything on here that shows me how many people are on the.
How many people
are listening?
Watching.
I mean, let's see. Do I have a number? No, that's not a number.
That's okay.
No, so I can't really tell. But we're going to come down to about 20 minutes here, and we'll probably end up wrapping up. So,
what you're doing, by the way, is good stuff. I want to say, that Destination Freedom is I think helping a lot of people, and it's and the idea of getting out of the federal zone and declaring yourself not to be a federal citizen, but rather to be a citizen of a state is the way to go. And it was interesting what you told me that in New Hampshire they were refusing to take those declarations when you went to get your licenses, and you subsequently contacted the Secretary of State. Who did you contact?
No, we went to the assistant deputy for the commissioner for the DMV. He wanted to know who was
being denied.
Because I said our clients, many of our clients and whatever had done these processes, and they wanted to know who they were. So we came up with a list for them, and they took our documents and that list to the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General came back and said that that the DMV had to take our documents in order for those documents to be true. And so consequently, they sent out memos to all the DMVs in the state to accept those documents. And so now it's been a very easy process.
And of course, part of that package is an affidavit, correct?
It's an explanatory statement.
Most people don't understand what an affidavit is. So why don't you enlighten people for those that don't know?
Well, typically when you get something notarized, it becomes an affidavit. So if you just have a statement where you sign it, that's one thing. But once you make it and have it notarized, then it becomes admissible in court as evidence.
Right. You declare the following to be true, and you sign under penalty of perjury. And so you are saying these are the facts, and I am signing it under penalty of perjury. If these facts can be proven not to be true, and that I am perjurous, then I am subject to the laws regarding perjury. And but what happens then is whatever institution you send that to, whether it's the IRS or whether it's the DMV or whether it's the immigration or whomever it is, aren't they legally obligated to challenge that affidavit?
Well, I mean,
if they find that those facts are not accurate,
they do. The State Department,
isn't it called the estoppel de acquiescence?
Governments and corporations don't have estoppel by acquiescence. If they acknowledge something, that's when they empower it. If they're silent, doesn't empower. People have those obligations, but corporations and governments and
government simply
they can be silent.
Ignores and silences your affidavit.
Then there's no culpability.
Even though they issue you a license or they issue you a passport.
No, I mean, listen, in those areas, if those documents, not only the passport process, but even the driver's license, at the bottom says they have a requirement that these will have to be true and correct.
Mhm.
So it's based on that statute that we
Right.
said
Well, penalty
we
of
want this
perjury.
to be true.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are penalty of perjury, within without the United States, but most states have an under penalty of perjury type of sentiment.
Sure.
But they want things to be true and correct. And so the idea is that if those forms, you can't make them correct by however you're filling them out, then an
You can't make-
affidavit would be appropriate
Right.
in order to say, well, this is what's true for me.
Right.
And it is true.
If
Then
they
they have an
don't deny
obligation.
it,
They have an
they're
obligation to make
acquiescing.
sure
They're saying yes.
that,
Okay.
that you've submitted documents, because
Yeah.
they certainly prosecute people for falsehoods and things like that. But there's also, it's interesting is that when you tell them that this document that I'm submitting is not true, it's false, if I can't have my explanatory statement, and you let them know that it's false
Mhm.
without it,
Mhm.
then they are culpable for knowing that there's a false
Correct.
written document,
Correct.
and then they become culpable in that capacity.
Correct.
And so that's part of why we have a
Sure.
explanatory statement or an affidavit.
Sure.
And
Well, like for example, I got a request in the state of New Hampshire to go to jury duty. Now, I've been to jury duty in the years past, and I feel like it's my citizen responsibility
yeah.
to do it. But on their form, it said asked if I was a U.S. citizen, so I didn't know how to respond to that. So Chris had already gone through the process of questioning the state as to how they defined U.S. citizen in their in their form for doing
jury questioning,
jury question,
for
jury.
qualifying for jury.
Yeah.
And they determined it was the
And they
14th
determined it was a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. So I just simply said no. When they said, "You're a U.S. citizen," I said no, and of course they then sent me a notification that you're no longer required to serve on the jury.
Now I believe that's a controversy, because first of all, you're born in the state. No,
Right.
you're born to American parents
Yeah.
in
In Belgium, I was born in
right.
Belgium. Yeah.
So you're born to American parents.
Yep.
So you can never be.
And I have-
you
I
can't
have
be
a-
president.
And it says right on my certificate of live birth, born to American parents. It doesn't say born
US
to
citizens.
U.S. citizens.
That's
It
right.
says
That's what it
born
used
to
to do.
American
It
parents.
used to say American parents and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But nowadays they're very much into the U.S. citizen
Now it's
thing.
all U.S.
But regardless, you have a driver's license here. You vote, and so you're very well connected in New
I moved to New
all
Hampshire in
this years.
1985.
And
Before
yet-
that, I was in
and here you're called-
Massachusetts.
Called to jury duty, and
And I wanna
since you
do
don't
it.
qualify, right?
I
'cause
want to do it.
we want freedom people in those
Yeah.
in
Now,
those
I
courts.
suppose it's possible. Of course,
Now,
if the-
I went to the legislature. I went to Dan Itza,
Mhm.
and I said the court just violated my duty.
Right.
And I said, "What
Well,
are you
so-
going to do about it?"
so
Now
I-
that should be a bill. That should be a bill before the legislature about jury duty.
I agree.
Is that you don't have to be a 14th
Could you-
Amendment
could you-
citizen,
if you could
because we
find
had
a-
juries in New Hampshire
I know.
before there was a 14th Amendment. So how is that possible
Exactly.
that they can be that way?
I think it would behoove you to contact the person you contacted initially regarding that and say,
right. He's not a
you know,
rep, but there is a rep. in
You're
there.
practicing falsehood here, because
Right.
citizens of the states are the ones that should be on jury duty, not federal citizens.
That's correct.
So
That's
a
correct.
person may be both. That's fine.
Yeah.
But your form should have nothing to do with 14th Amendment federal citizens. It should have everything to do with state citizens. Sorry,
That's right.
you can probably hear that
That's
pretty
on the-
loud.
yeah,
So
but
now, could you see? I was out of the country at the time, so I was doing this all online, and that was part of the reason that I was conflicted about how to do it.
Right.
Because if it had been literally a form that I had to fill out, I would have simply said, "See attaching signing statement," and I would have said, "This is my U.S. citizen. I will answer this yes, under the understanding that this is how I'm defining United States."
well, I asked them for the answer, the definition of the term United States, and they wouldn't give it. They kept saying, "Come in, ask the judge, ask the judge."
Right.
And so here I am. I'm not qualified as a juror.
Right.
I'm in training for jury.
Right.
They're going through all that stuff,
Right.
and then I'm in the courtroom. The defendant's in the courtroom.
Right.
I'm there. They're pulling names out of the hat. I get called to sit on this jury,
Right.
and I'm not yet qualified to even be in the room.
Wow.
And so the judge says, "Do you have any reason to that you shouldn't sit in on this jury?" I said, "I'm not yet qualified as a juror." And he says, "Do you want to be on the jury?" I said, "That's not relevant. How many here want to be here? How many? It's like, it's not wrong. You're being subpoenaed into this jury. You're not being, oh, do you want to do this? And of course I did.
Right.
But that wasn't relevant because I was not yet qualified.
Right.
And then he excused me. But you can't excuse someone from jury duty if they don't qualify for jury duty.
I know.
And so that's the way it was. And I went out there and I told him, I said, listen, I'm not doing this again, because they usually give you 2 dates. And I said, I'm not doing this again. You're going to give me the definition so I can answer this question. So I wrote to him and said, the State Department defines U.S. citizen by the 14th Amendment. And they wrote back, that's how the court defines U.S. citizen, by the 14th Amendment.
Wow.
And I said, by what statute in New Hampshire does it say that the 14th Amendment is how we determine jury duty? And she wrote back and said, the 14th Amendment.
Wow.
I was like, fine, went online, no.
Wow.
And that was the end of that.
Wow.
And I have all that in wedding signatures, stuff like that. And it's amazing. But again, I believe I can't stand trial in New Hampshire because I can't be tried by a jury of my peers.
Well, that's a good word.
Yeah, so I
That's
would
good
definitely make sure that would occur. Certainly not federally, because they're not a jury of my peers.
Right.
I wouldn't even seat on that. That would that'd be
you could ask the prosecuting attorney, "Are you a U.S. citizen?"
Yeah, that is a violation too. They all
are. You a federal? You a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen? And they're gonna say yes. Well, then you can't prosecute me.
Yeah.
You have no jurisdiction over me. Go back to D.C.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Oh no, I know. It's not.
It's
not in there. Not.
But
there,
here's
not,
the thing, right? It's the biggest fucking scam in the world. It's the biggest scam in the world. It is. It's a scam.
I think so.
Because 99% of Americans have no idea.
And they wouldn't. Wouldn't agree to it if they did. They wouldn't.
They wouldn't care.
Well, no, they would care. They would say, let me ask you a question.
Well, unless you said to them, you don't have to pay income tax.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They'd be like,
really? This one pays an income tax. This one doesn't. Which you want to be?
Yeah.
Well, duh.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, like it'd be taking the money going to the Federal Reserve. It's astonishing, but that is the case. So, how you doing on your beer?
I'm empty.
Oh, geez. Well, here, let me
go to the beer.
Help you out. I got some.
It's a pretty bottle. Should I twist and show you what it is? I think you can tell what brand it is just by the bottle from the back. Can't you?
It's not Bud Light, is it?
No. I don't do light beer.
We're doing the Modelo Negro.
Well, this is Modelo Negro. And this,
I love the creamy.
This is Sammy Adams.
Well, see, we're on this. I don't usually. At least I won't let you know. I usually drinking on the.
He never drinks. He never drinks. This is very unusual for him.
No, I mean not on the show. I mean, no, not on the broadcast. So yeah. So I usually have to do my sleeve on here, but anyway, but no, I'm glad that you came up. I love when you come in and we get to hang out. But we didn't do this time was you didn't get to play any music. You gotta leave a guitar here.
I know.
And
I have a 12-string out there, but I I should have brought my guitar. I'm not quite sure why.
We need a guitar here. I'll get one and we'll hang it on the wall. And then that way there'll always be a guitar here, and then we can also play. And then that way we can sing and perform.
Yeah. If you ever want to come to Belize, come on down to Key Caulker. It's
a that's a nice island down there. Yeah,
beautiful little island. Yeah.
Nice place to be.
You'll have a great time. Snorkeling and scuba diving and fishing and just hanging out in the beautiful crystal clear waters.
Yeah, so
it's from Florida, it's like a 2.5 hour flight, maybe. I think it's like $100 one way.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, pretty cheap. Maybe. Well, it's like $100
in season or out season.
It's like $100 to Cancun. To Belize City, it's probably a little bit more. It might be $150 or something, but
that's not bad.
It's pretty cheap.
So we're planning a class. Maybe the end of September, somewhere in that timeline in Montana. If you're interested in that class in Montana, then you reach out to us at statecitizen@destinationfreedom.org. And we're planning and preparing for a class like in January in Hawaii. And we're going to get the details of that. If you're interested in that, you can also reach out to us. This is August right now of 2024. So that's coming up. And of course, you can go to destinationfreedom.org and log in, take our classes. If you'd like to learn more about eliminating income tax liability, you might take our state citizenship class, and you can sign up for that there. And that's available. And then, of course, we do a passport process because we establish with the State Department that you're not a federal citizen or that you don't have an income tax liability because who has an income tax liability? All U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens. That's what the tax code says, and that's what they mean. And both the IRS and the State Department define U.S. citizen by the 14th Amendment. And so many people also define their U.S. citizenship by the 14th Amendment because they typically don't ask or know what the definition of the term United States is when they're being asked the question, are you a United States citizen? That's why many times I'll say, I am a United States citizen and I'm not a United States citizen.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's only one statutory citizen that I'm aware of, at least in the U.S. or America, and that is a federal 14th Amendment citizen. I don't know of any state that has a statutory citizenship. That would mean that the legislature created citizenship in that capacity. You don't have, in most states, you just move there, set up habitation, domicile, you're a citizen of that state. That's how they typically define citizens of the states. And now before the 14th Amendment, they would make reference to state citizens as United States citizen, and it was a loose term. And so that's how things were were customary because they would just loosely say United States citizens. It would be like referring to a German as a European citizen. It's true, but there's no European citizenship, at least as far as I know.
Right.
I don't know
if
European
European? Yes,
Union,
they are.
Yeah. And so same as in Italian, they're European, but Italians aren't
That was
Europeans.
long before the EU, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there is no EU citizen.
Well,
There's no such
as
thing
far as I know, they
There's
don't.
a statutory EU citizen. No, there isn't.
Yeah. So
they're trying to do it. They're trying to create a EU constitution and establish EU citizenship. They're trying to do that because we all know the EU and the US DC are all in bed together, and they're
working together.
They're working together.
So we're America's the European Union on steroids, and so the European Union doesn't invade countries and all that stuff like our country does, America does, and so that that's what's so screwy. A great film to watch is called Brexit, so you understand what was the sentiment, why the British wanted to pull out of the European Union.
Oh, RFK is great on that. He talks about Brexit and how that all happened, and that's
very powerful.
Definitely the fault of the U.S. if you want to put it that way. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is immigration mentioned as a power to the federal government in the Constitution?
No.
Okay.
Immigration that is practiced today is strictly in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, where they have exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever in the District of Columbia. Immigration, the 10th Amendment says the power not delegated to the United States, the federal government, by the Constitution is reserved to the states and the people. So immigration is a state power, hasn't been delegated to the federal government. What is occurring is the federal government is immigrating and naturalizing people into the District of Columbia.
14th Amendment U.S. citizenship.
That's right.
So all states of the Union have a naturalization process. Because remember that you can't be a sovereign state if you don't determine who your citizens are. If someone else is telling you, hey, he's not a citizen, but he is or she is, and then you're no longer sovereign.
That's right.
You understand? So obviously the states are in charge of who is determined to be their citizens, not the federal government. It's insane that the states have allowed the federal government to take
their duty.
over.
That's right.
Totally derelicting their duty.
It's not a usurpation, because you see that would mean like as if
the states
are resist
power
because they want the money.
You do it. We don't want to do it. We don't want to do it.
They constantly defer, and the thing is, how will this change? Frederick Douglass says power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you'll find the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue until they're resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those in whom they oppress. And so that's what's occurring all the time. And until people decide to do something different, it's not going to change.
That's amazing. Immigration, that's why so many, even libertarian candidates are like, oh yeah, we got to seal the borders. I'm like, the fuck? Seal the borders. Open the fucking borders. How about that?
How about seal up? How about close the borders of welfare?
Yeah.
Now that would be better.
You can't come here and collect welfare. You got to come here and work and pay taxes.
Listen, before 1910,
follow the laws.
Before 1910, there was open borders.
I know.
And people came and worked.
You got in the ship. You came over here. You got a job. You bought some land. You got married. You had kids. You were an American.
I remember in the film 1776 where John Adams says, "Are you calling our black slaves Americans?" And John Adams says, "They're people and they're here. I know of no other qualification."
Bingo.
I love that.
Bingo.
I love that sentiment.
Yeah, we're
it's like
so conned and lied to.
Because
everybody thinks Mexicans are going to flush over the
man.
border into America. It's not going to happen. Let me tell you something. My son, bought my company. He's doing construction here in New Hampshire, and almost all the guys that are doing roofing, sheetrocking, plastering, they're Belizeans, Guatemalans, Hondurans, Costa Ricans. These are hard workers, right? And they're doing. I mean, have you ever seen the movie A Day Without a Mexican?
No, I haven't.
It's hysterical. It's got to watch it. Day Without a Mexican. Look, they're people. Are we all free? Are all men free? I know there's a series on Netflix called Messiah, and it's interesting. It's a really good psychological, political, play. I mean, it's really cool. And
not if there was a Messiah today, right?
And he's in court, as if Jesus or the Messiah were to come back today, and what would happen? And he gets up in court and he says, borders. What is a border? You're there and I'm here. A border is decided by the lucky, and that's true. Borders are decided by the lucky. Why could a free man, if he's born free, if he's born with these rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, why can't he step over some imaginary fucking boundary that somebody decided was there? Why? Why is it that I, as an American with my passport, can go anywhere in the world? Anyone. Come. You're American. Of course, come. But if I was a Belizean, that I have friends in Belize. These are lovely people. They have jobs. They're responsible. They have no criminal background, right? 3 years trying to get
They just
a
assumed
visa
that if they
to
came
just
here,
come.
they would stay here.
And by the way, one of the gals, a good friend of mine, her father is an American. 3 years it took her to get a visa just to come to the country and visit her father. So what happens? She flies in to Miami. She gets off. She goes before immigration, security, or whatever it is, TSA, or who the fuck those idiots are down there. And they go, well, we see on your Facebook account, because, in order to come to America, you have to tell them all the social media that you're on. Did you know that? When you fill out a ESTA form online and you pay that, you have to tell them all your social media accounts. So the guy goes on to her Facebook account. Oh, it says here that you're thinking of going to some college campuses. She goes, yeah, well, I think I'd like to maybe come back and get a student visa and come back and take some courses here. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry, we can't let you come in. She goes, what? It took me 3 years to get we can't let you come in. What are you talking about? Sorry. They don't have to explain, they can just say no. Because they think she's going to come in, go to a college campus, like it so much, she'll just stay and go to college. She won't go home. Now, mind you, she's got a fucking kid back in Belize. She's got a job back in Belize. She's got a husband back in Belize. She's visiting her fucking father. This is America, land of the proud and the free and the brave, right? MAGA, make America great again. It's bullshit.
No,
it's bullshit.
People don't. Our policies today are unkind and are not American, if you will. Those ideals. The only problem on the southern border is the federal government. And let me just tell you a little warning, a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about walls. When people make walls in their own neighborhoods or whatever it is for that, when people make walls, that makes good neighbors. When governments make walls, they're to wall you in. Okay. It's always to wall you in. It's not to keep anybody out. And let me tell you another thing. If you haven't been to the southern border, the problem isn't the southern border. Do you know how many people fly here every day, all the time, and never leave? It's completely porous. Any of the countries that allow people to come in and fly in, if they make it here, many times they just stay. And they don't, and there's no follow-up or anything. So it doesn't, it's a false sense. It's a false sense of that. Now, look, if they, are, enemies of liberty and freedom that bring in these socialists and all these people, and they entice them with, listen, these are poor countries. They're enticing them with food and all. What do you expect them to do? They're going to want to be here, especially if they can get free food, Listen, our prisons are better than many of these countries they're coming from. It's a stinking mess. The people that are testing it,
most Guatemalans and Mexicans and Costa Ricans, they couldn't afford $4 for 2 peppers? Are you fucking crazy? A head of lettuce, $5?
But they'll
$5 for a head of
outwork
lettuce.
Americans all day.
I know they will.
That's what I'm saying.
They will.
And so getting here is like, look and see. That's what. But listen, look up Milton Friedman where he talks about our borders and the problem. Our problem is that we're handing out welfare. It isn't that people are here, because let me tell you something. Listen, nobody can take your job if you work hard.
If you do a
if
good
you
job,
don't work hard or you don't do a good job, anybody can take it. It's just a false sense of BS.
Totally, it's all based on BS.
And listen, the drug war, how are we winning that war?
Yeah.
I mean, good God, from the beginning of that till now, it's completely the worst it's ever been. How are we doing with the drug war?
And by the way, Biden spearheaded the war on drugs. He was one of the constructors of the war on drugs. And, you know, so now your average black man between the ages of 18 and 32 or something, it's like 8 out of 10 have served time in prison.
Oh,
it's staggering statistics, right?
It's so bad.
Because you can have a guy with a phone on the street corner, you know, checking out, making sure the cops aren't coming, and he's making $1,000 a week because the price of drugs is so absurd, right? Yeah. Whereas if it was legal, suddenly the
market drops.
Yeah, you wouldn't have organized crime. You wouldn't have these in Mexico.
Well,
you wouldn't have all these drug lords in Mexico. They wouldn't be getting rich.
Of course, we knew that when prohibition occurred, it created the mafia.
Yeah, of course.
Duh.
Yeah.
And so, and it's astonishing that here it is, marijuana is legal in many states, that the federal government still have it as illegal. It's a duplistic thing. It's just absurd.
And there's a demand.
It's categorized.
People want it.
It's marked as a Category 1 narcotic.
Yeah.
Marijuana.
Yeah.
It says that it has no medicinal benefits. Idiots. I mean, there's just conflicting information. The fact that it's in that category is part of its error. And not only that, but because of the stigma, the hemp industry in America is in the shitter. I mean, there's a whole industry of building materials and things that hemp does. But because it comes from not the same plant, but you know, a similar plant, they've killed that whole industry.
DuPont was responsible for that. Yeah. If you ever want to read a fun book, it's called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. It talks about the history of all the marijuana laws. It's really fascinating.
It's crazy.
And Christopher Bird wrote The Emperor Wears No Clothes. He also wrote the book The Secret Life of Plants, which is an amazing book as well. Anyway.
Well, listen, it's been fun. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you guys are here. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to call it a night, and I'm delighted that you showed up, and we'll see you next time. Hey, if you'd like to hear more from Greg, we'll capture him in Belize.
Yeah, and you can go onto my Telegram. I have a Telegram blog.
We'll see if we can do I know we can do it on GoToMeeting and have us on that stuff. Sure. But we'll have to record that, and then we'll have to upload this. I don't know if we'll be able to do this live.
If you're on Telegram,
find out on YouTube.
If you're on Telegram, check out my. It's called Truths, Theories, and Other Stuff. So you can check out my blog, Truths, Theories, and Other Stuff.
In the email I send out, if you want to be on our email list, you can just go to the website and log in and all that.
If you want to talk about UFOs and giants and the Mayan Hindu connection and archaeology and the sunken city of Atlantis and Edgar Cayce and the Bimini Islands and all that kind of stuff. The city they found off the shores of Cuba. Why are we in Cuba? Why has Cuba been sanctioned off? Because we have research facilities down there studying this underground city that was discovered. It's all kinds of interesting stuff like that. If you want to hear about all that stuff and get curious about that, check out my little blog. It's kind of fun.
Well, hey, thanks. Appreciate you.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. All right, you guys, take care. Have yourself a great night, and we'll see you next time. We'll see you on Wednesday. We'll do a broadcast, and it'll be a lot of fun. All right, take care. Bless you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.
Why don't you guys do